Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about my top supplement for acute pain relief. Now, before we get into this, I want to remind everybody I am not a doctor and I am not a chemist, and I do not pretend to be either one of those things. I do not encourage the use of any substances, illegal or legal. This video is strictly for educational and entertainment purposes only. So, acute pain is often treated with certain things like NSAIDs and Tylenol. Acetaminophen, brand name Tylenol, like I just said. You could have Aleve, you could have Advil, which is ibuprofen, you could have aspirin, all these different ones. A lot of people don't experience many benefits from these, however, when it comes to extreme acute pain. Let's say, for example, you have an injury that is really severe, but not enough for your doctor to necessarily prescribe you opioids. Oftentimes, this can come from a sprained muscle. Maybe you're on muscle relaxers. Obviously, always check for drug interactions. And always talk to your doctor. I'm not encouraging this, and this is not medical advice. But I think the absolute best pain reliever for acute pain has to be Kratom. Depending on who you're talking to, or Kratom if you hear it pronounced in its native language. But Kratom itself is, it can be in tea form, it can be in pill form, but it has natural opioid agonists, meaning it attaches to the opioid receptor, and it was going to be banned by the FDA at one point. It was going to be a scheduled drug, but there was a massive protest that actually prevented the signing. To my understanding, this is how it went down. The movie I learned a lot about Kratom from was called A Leaf of Faith. I used a lot of different sources. There's some competing data that says that it can even hurt your liver, which is typically the argument for... It's the go-to argument anytime anybody wants to say that something's actually bad for you when they're... like they do it with SARMs, they say, oh, it's liver toxic. Now, everything can probably be liver toxic in some dosages, but there are a lot of SARMs that aren't liver toxic, or at least don't present high liver toxicity. Ostarine actually, ironically, is one of the ones that might present liver toxicity. But going back to the initial topic at hand, when it comes to Kratom, the main arguments about it are that it can cause liver toxicity and that there were 3 deaths associated with it. The 3 deaths were also multi-drug related deaths, meaning the person's had a lot of drugs in their system. I think oftentimes even actual opioids. So I don't think it's fair to say that. In another video, I accidentally said the withdrawals from Kratom are 3 times as strong as other opioids, and then I pinned a comment underneath to explain that I meant caffeine is what I heard. I don't know that this is actually true. I've never gone on Kratom for a consistent period of time. I've only ever used it for acute pain. I did try to cure my migraines with it, but unfortunately it did not work consistently enough, and sometimes would actually trigger some migraine type sensations in me. So when it comes to hurting something, like let's say you have a sprained ankle and your doctor says, well, take Tylenol and aspirin, Tylenol and an Advil, or acetaminophen and ibuprofen, the generics, every 3 hours, and you're doing that, nothing's happening. This is a very common case. It happens all the time. Unfortunately, I hate to say it like this, but those drugs really work well for some people and they just don't for other people. Sometimes Tylenol works great for very specific people. Sometimes Advil works great for very specific people. Sometimes they don't work in conjunction. There's also some arguments that they actually prevent the healing effects, or at least I've heard the argument that Aleve actually prevents the healing of the injured area. Now, opioids themselves are kind of more of a direct way at helping with pain, because it's kind of like how when you go for a run, when you first start running, everything feels awful. But towards the end of your run, you feel really good, and that pain in your ankle or whatever you had or whatever was bothering you at the beginning, kind of doesn't matter as much anymore, and you feel a lot better. That's pretty much the same logic with using opioids, because it's those endorphins. It's synthetically activating those endorphins to make you kind of forget about your pain almost, which is kind of how endorphins work in a way. Overall, I think that kratom's amazing for acute pain. I don't think enough people look into it for acute pain enough. I think too many people use it as a long-term drug medication. Not to say that that's a bad thing. I think people are much better off to use kratom than, for example, being on like heroin or something horrible. But I'm specifically more so talking to people who take it every day for maybe the cognition effects. So like, if somebody's saying, "Oh, I need to take kratom every morning because it gives me such a mental boost," I wouldn't really want to play around with that, especially if the withdrawals are 3 times as strong as caffeine. Granted, again, that's just what somebody commented, because they had, I think they had anecdotal reports themselves and from what they had researched on my other video about kratom. And so overall, I mean, it just comes down to what somebody can tolerate. I don't think I could tolerate kratom withdrawals, if I'm being completely honest. So I only use kratom sparingly, depending on if I want a mental boost, if I want pain relief, that sort of thing. But when it comes to kratom every day, I really think it's extremely beneficial for people who are trying to get off of hardcore drugs like heroin or some other sort of street drug, and they're trying to get that opioid agonist effect. I think that's amazing. I'm not so convinced on the cognitive effects to use it every day, that is. I think if someone was to, say, use this as a cycle, maybe they use 2,000 milligrams of ginseng and some odd milligrams of caffeine on Monday. And then on Tuesday, they use kratom. And then on Wednesday, they use Adderall, because they're prescribed Adderall. And then they just do that cycle over and over again, and then take a break on Sundays. I think that would be extremely beneficial for people, just because it has that effect. It would not be necessarily building up too strong of a tolerance. But that's my 2 cents. Again, not medical advice. I love it when people comment on these videos. And yeah, I want to hear what everybody else has to say. So thanks for stopping by. Please subscribe to this channel if you enjoyed these type of videos. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. And until next time, remember to keep those shoulders back and down, and don't just have a good one. Have a great one.